Y'all know what's going on. It's time for another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Becker, and welcome to the show, y'all. Now look, the police just got there. They just got there. Max Skip's mom, you know what I'm saying, her husband tell her to open the door and let him in. She lets him in. The police come in. Pops explains everything to him, right? They tell him they know this man. They know him. Say he was locked up with their son that's in prison today. So they take him, they put him in handcuffs, and they set him in a chair, and they ask him, "What's going on, son? Tell us what's going on." And he sits there and he's crying, and the police, they don't want to hear that. They got a body right here. They're like, "Look, that's too late. Tell us what happened. What's going on?" So he tells them that he thought that he would be able to find a good lick here, you know what I'm saying, and get him some money and then go on with his life, and nobody would even know that they were not supposed to be there that night. And they said, "How did you know they were not supposed to be here? Who gave you that information?" And he said, "Their son." So the father is upset because he reads that as saying that Max Skip had something to do with it. And he said, "My son had nothing to do with this at all." And Matt Coolie tell him, "No, he didn't know what I was doing." He said, "I was milking him, getting information from him." And the mother, she asked, she said, "Why would you do that, son? Why would you do that?" And he told her, he said, "I was jealous. I was angry. Y'all had so much and I had nothing. And you made me feel like I was a bodyguard for him, like I was just somebody to protect him while he was there." And that hurt Max Skip's mama because that's not what she meant. But see, she was smart enough to understand how he could have assumed that. And she told him, she said, "Son, that's not what I meant. I never thought that about you, ever." She said, "I considered you to be part of our family." And she looked at him and she reached out and she took his hand and she held his hand and she said, "Look, you got to pay for this, but it's going to be okay." And he sat there and he started crying. And you know, when you start crying, them deep ones that come from your belly and all this and that, and you're heaving real heavy and all this and that, and he just couldn't help it. But see, the police were there to do a job. They weren't there for no counseling session. So they told him, "Look, let's go." The coroner was on the way. They pulled up, and they came in, they got the body, and they left. And then they took all the crime scene stuff they needed, and the father had to clean that blood up where he had just shot and killed somebody. And that was hard for him to deal with. And now the news media, it's all over the news. And they got a picture of Coolie in the back of the police car as they pull out. And back at the prison, Max Skip happened to be up that night. And he's watching the news. And they're talking about how a recently released felon on parole tried to rob a family member of someone that he just was in prison with. And when Max Skip saw Matt Coolie in the back seat of that police car, his heart sank. And he sat up in the bed and he was looking at it and he turned the volume up even though he could hear everything that they were saying. Clearly, he just wanted to make sure he didn't miss anything, and he turned it up, and the camera and from the camera crew at the house spanned, and they saw his mother and his father standing in the doorway hugging each other. And then they said one person was killed in the altercation, in the attempted robbery. And they said that this individual was an active gang member in this op movement, right? So now everybody in the prison is seeing this, and now they're trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together. What was Mac Coolie doing with the op? What's going on? And the op is dead, and now the people in the prison that are part of the same organization that the op is a part of, now they looking and saying, "What happened? What's going on, man? Did he kill our brother? How did this happen?" So now everybody's watching this news and they're trying to figure out what's going on. There's too many questions that need to be answered. Too many. So a few minutes later, the captain comes to Max Skip's cell door and he tells him, son, we need to talk to you. And he gets out of the bed and he comes to the door and they ask him, did you see the news? And he told them, yes, sir, I saw it. They said, well, we need to take you out of here. We need to take you to the phone. The warden wants you to be able to call your parents. So he gets dressed and he comes out of the cell. This is at night. Everybody else locked down. But when the captain and them came in there, all the lights came on. So everybody's seeing Max Skip leave and go out the cell. And when he goes out of the cell, they take him to the office and they get on the phone and they call on the phone. And when they call, they talking to his parents. And when they get his parents on the phone, they ask, Max Skip asks his parents, what's going on? And then they relate a story to him and they tell him, look, Matt Coolio tried to come over here to rob us, and when he robbed us, your dad had to kill this young man that was with him. And his dad said, son, did you know anything about this? And Max Skip told him, I didn't know nothing about it, Dad. I had no idea that this was going down. He said, are you okay? Are you and Mom okay? And they told him, yeah, we're okay, we're fine, but we need to understand what happened. So Max Skip started to think about what was really going down, and when he finished thinking about all the things, he said, Dad, that's my fault. And the captain is standing right there in the room, and he hears this young man say, this is my fault. And now he's looking at him real hard. And Max Skip is on the phone. He's saying, Daddy, I was running my mouth. And I was talking about the things that we have and the lifestyle that we live in. Now I see it. He tried to rob y'all because of what I told him about y'all. And his mom started crying on the phone, and when he heard his mom crying, he started crying. And then the captain reached down and put his hand on his shoulder and said, son, it's going to be okay. He said, these things happen. He said, that's why we tell you when you come into prison, you got to be careful and not be running your mouth and talking about the things that are going on with your family on the street, because you never know who you're going to be around. You never know what they're going to be thinking and what they might be trying to do. And you found yourself in a situation where you were hanging around people that come from a different background than you, that don't make them bad people, but you don't understand how hungry a person can be. And the captain is getting I'm talking about some real street gutter information about how you need to conduct yourself in prison. And everything is starting to make sense to him. And what dawned on him in that moment was how selfish he had been, how he didn't understand that his family had worked hard to give him a life different than Matt Coolio's. Not because he was better, but because they wanted better for him. Because they wanted better for him. And that's what happens with a lot of us. We don't appreciate what our parents or grandparents or people in our lives that are the adults, our uncles and aunties and cousins, we don't appreciate what they do for us. How they try to set us up so that we don't have to live like they live. We don't appreciate that. We throw it all away. We don't appreciate. You could even go back further to our ancestors that helped build this country. We don't appreciate the sacrifice that they made by force or by choice. Either way, they did not want us to live the lifestyle that we chose to live. Hurting people. And now, Max Skip is responsible for his family being robbed. Tried to be robbed. And now one man is dead and another one is on his way back to the penitentiary probably for the rest of his life. So when they get Matt Coolio to jail, they book him in on attempted robbery and first-degree felony murder. Let me explain that to you. Now, you know Matt Coolio didn't kill him, right? But if you go on a caper and somebody end up dead, you catch that body. You catch that body. That's how that works. So now he's facing a murder charge and a robbery charge. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. And now all of a sudden he's at the jail. His life is flashing before his eyes. And the only thing that he's seeing during all this flashing is prison bars. Prison bars. He don't see nothing else but prison bars. And he can't take it. He starts to spaz out, losing his mind. He's angry. He's upset about his situation. He's upset, y'all. So he starts banging his head on the wall. Banging his head on the door. And the middle of his head split wide open like a persimmon. Just split. Split wide open. And the officers, they rush to him and they grab him, they get him, and they tell him, hold on, you're trying to hurt yourself. And then they put him in handcuffs and they got him laying on the floor like a pig, on his stomach with his hand behind his back. And they got to get him up, and they get him up, and he keeps on trying to fight him. So they call the nurse. The nurse comes in there, and then they calm him down. They calm him down. And then they get him to talk to the psychiatrist. And the psychiatrist, after talking to him, she surmises that he's thinking about hurting himself. The pressure of the situation done got to him. He can't face the prospect of living the rest of his life in the penitentiary because he tried to rob and somebody got killed in the process. He can't handle it. The reality is too heavy for him. And now he's afraid. And he don't want to live no more. But see, it's one thing about being in the penitentiary or the jail, right? They ain't gonna let you do that. They ain't gonna let you do that to yourself. They ain't. They're not. So they tell him that they're gonna put him on what they call suicide watch. See, when you get put on suicide watch, let me tell you something. When you get put on suicide watch, bucket naked, they take all your clothes from you because they don't want you to be able to use any of your clothes to try to do anything to yourself. Bucket naked, and they put you in a paper gown. When I say paper, I'm talking about paper. Like at the hospital. Yeah, and it never, for whatever reason, they give you a paper gown that don't never stay tied. It won't stay tied up. You can't tie it good. And then when you in a situation like that, even though the cell that they put you in is ice cold because they got that AC running, you sweating like you been out there running a marathon. That adrenaline is pumping. And then he walking around the cell and he keeps on trying to do things to hurt himself, and reluctantly, they decide they got to strap him to the bed. They strap him down to the bed and he just lays there and he's just yelling and yelling. And now they got to keep the lights on because when they walk around, they got to be able to see him. Even though he's strapped down, they still got to be able to lay eyes on him and make sure he's okay. Now he's just laying on the bed with a paper gown on, strapped to the bed, just screaming, lights right there shining in his face. But he did that. He did that. But he was free, y'all. He had gotten out. He had an opportunity to turn his life around. But see, that resentment that had built up in him, it blinded him to the opportunity that he had. It blinded him to the opportunity that he had that where he could have just turned his whole life around. Seek out the help. He had a resource that could have changed his whole life. But he didn't see them as a resource. He didn't. He saw them as an opportunity to get it together without asking for help. See, a lot of things that go on in the penitentiary with the guys that's in the penitentiary, and the females too, you know what I'm saying, if you're at the women's penitentiary, it's pride. See, that pride won't let you ask for help. Because you tell yourself you don't want nobody to feel sorry for you, but you're sorry. You're sorry. And if somebody feeling sorry for you puts them in a situation where they'll help you, then you need to accept that and get over that. But see, a lot of us don't want to do that. I don't need your help. I know what I'm doing. But look what they got you. Let me know how that worked out for you. Pride goeth before the fall, they say. And man, Coolie fell hard. Fell so hard that he can't even see straight no more. So he ends up going to trial. They didn't seek the death penalty. Because Max Skip's family, they didn't want that. They didn't want that. But the law calls for what it calls for. And he got life in the penitentiary. Another 18 years for the attempted robbery. Oh, and let's not forget, the feds end up charging him for the gun possession. His and the dude that died. So he got fed time too whenever he finished the state time, which that ain't gonna happen. You understand? Now he's in the penitentiary on psych drugs just so he can get up in the morning and cope with the decision that he made to throw his life away, to involve somebody else in his shenanigans, and they're dead. They chose that though. But it's hard for him to deal with that. It's hard for him to deal with it. Now Max Skip, he don't know what to do now. He's got a few more months before he goes home. He gonna flatten his sentence. He got a few more months before he goes home, and he's trying to decide what direction he wants to go. He's still a part of the fam though. But he ain't feeling it no more. He don't want to go to the meetings. He don't want to do anything. He just wants to live his life. He wants his parents to know that he's a different person. So about a couple of weeks before he gets ready to go home, he goes to the 9 and he tells the 9, he said, look, I don't want this no more. And the 9 looks at him, he tells him, he said, look, I understand. But you know, it costs to walk away. See, you ain't been a part of this long enough to where you could retire and be done and all this and that with no hands on, right? He said, but if you really want to go, think about what it's going to take for you to go. And the 9 told him some real stuff, some real gangster stuff. He said, look, this is what you do, man. Because I don't want to have to make that decision to where they're going to beat on you. I don't want to do that to you. He said, so just stay a part of this until you go home. And when you go home, you walk away. Don't associate, don't do nothing. Because on the streets, they'll let you walk away like that. Just mind your business and go your way. And don't find yourself in a situation where you have to rep this. Don't find yourself in a situation where you can get asked to do something. And just walk away and live your life as if you've never been a part of this. He said, because I understand, man. I understand. And the 9 tells me, I wish I had somebody that would have told me this a long time ago. But I'm in too deep. And you not. You got a chance. So Max Skip, he told him that's what he was going to do. So for the next couple of weeks, everything was on the low. And then he walked out. And when he walked out, his mother and his father was waiting on him in the parking lot at the prison. And he hugged him and he cried. And he told him that he was sorry. He told him he was sorry for what he did. And his parents, they hugged him. They said, look, let's just move on. Let's just move on. And they did. They sold their house. They moved to another city. And they all started over as a family. And now, Skip ain't Max Skip no more. He living his life. He living his life. And his family is too. Separate from the business. Because it came that close to costing him everything. Imagine that. If his mother and his father would have gotten hurt. Imagine that. Imagine how he would have felt by being somebody that he called a brother doing it. Just leaving that with you, something to think about. When you think about living this lifestyle, I'm telling you, don't do it. Don't do it. It ain't worth it, y'all. This has been another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and I say peace, y'all.